In this video, I'm going to show you how to place your brake master cylinder on this Dodge Ram 2500. It's located on the driver's side of your engine compartment. Let's get started. I'm going to take a rag and remove all of this debris that's built up around the cap of the master cylinder, just so I don't get this inside into the fluid. Remove the cap, set it aside, and at this point I'm going to remove all of this fluid with an extractor pump or a vacuum pump. You can use whatever else you have that will remove the brake fluid from the reservoir. That's all the fluid that I'm going to get out of this, so we can continue with our job. Next, I'm going to remove the connector for the brake level sensor here, brake fluid level sensor. Take a little pocket screwdriver or a pick and pry that lock out, and then press on this one to get the connector out of there. A lot of times it gets full of sand in here, so shake it off, make sure there's no corrosion in it. Looks good, so I'm going to set it aside, and the next step is going to be breaking these lines free and popping them off the master cylinder. That's why I have a bunch of these absorbent pads here, so that brake fluid doesn't leak all over the floor or all over the truck. Use a 12mm line wrench, or flare nut wrench, whatever you want to call it. Break these free. These can get pretty tight. There we go. Once you do break it free, make sure that it doesn't spin the line with it. Mine is not, so that's good. If it does, work it back and forth, maybe spray it with rust penetrant, but spinning it with the line is going to cause the line to break, and then you'll need to build a brake line. Trying to avoid that. Once this is freed up, just pull it out the rest of the way. You can even use an open-ended wrench or a regular wrench at that point. This is just a lot more helpful for breaking it free when it's really tight. All right, there's one. Let's do the same to the other one. And there's the other one. Set these aside. Inspect their condition to make sure they're not bad. Mine are great, totally reusable, so I will do that. Now, let's remove the two mounting nuts that hold the brake master cylinder onto the brake booster. Use a 13mm socket and unbolt the two mounting nuts. And the second one. Wiggle the master cylinder and remove it from the brake booster. There we go. Sometimes it gets a little corroded in there. And there it is. Inspect the mounting area on the brake booster and make sure that it's reusable. This one is a little bit corroded, but that's okay. It is still reusable, so I'm going to clean it up with a rag. The important part is in here where the O-ring rides, so it can create a nice seal for the vacuum of the brake booster. So at this point, once I have it all cleaned up, I'm going to take my brake master cylinder, line it up, make sure it lines up with that rod in there in the center, press it into position, make sure it's lined up on both studs, which it is, and get that O-ring seated. If you have a hard time seating it, you can put a little bit of silicone paste on it, which I'm actually going to remove and do because it's not really wanting to slide right in. Make sure you're not pinching anything. There we go. That's nicely seated. Let's install the two mounting nuts so we can clamp this on tight. One on the top, one on the bottom. Snug them up. The torque for both master cylinder mounting nuts is 18.5 foot-pounds. Of course, do the same to both. Next, I'm going to bleed the master cylinder, and there are multiple ways to bench bleed it. I like to do it in the vehicle. With these lines that I have hooked up here, you could do it before you install it on a bench in a vise, either this way or other ways. Doesn't matter. This is my preferred method. Make some brake lines, route them back into the top of the master cylinder. So now let's fill it with fresh fluid and start bleeding it. Top this off with fresh brake fluid all the way up to the top. If you watch the side of the reservoir, you'll see the level in here. This is almost at the max line, which is right about here. But I'm going to keep going a little bit because there is air in the system, so as soon as I pump it a few times, it'll actually go down. That's it right there. I don't want to go all the way to the top. Right now the level's about here. If I go all the way to the top, it's probably going to spill a little bit. Now from inside the vehicle, pump up the brake pedal, go all the way to the floor slowly, and then release it. That way the air will get pushed out and brake fluid will get pulled in. Go slowly. Just do this about 10 to 15 times. That should bleed all the air out of the master cylinder. At this point, everything is as bled as it'll be, and I can remove these lines. When you remove these, make sure you are quick, or plug the hole at least, because fluid will start pouring out of here since the master cylinder is full of fluid now. These are not very tight, but regardless, I'm going to use my wrench, break these free, and remove them. As you can see, already starting to leak. Okay, take this out, quickly put this line in, try to start it. With this on here, I'm going to tighten it up so that it can stop leaking. That's bottomed out. Just give it a little bit extra. That should be good. I'll clean it up in a second. For now, let's do the same on the back side here. I'll remove my homemade line and install the actual brake line. Wipe off any excess brake fluid here. I will be cleaning it up with brake parts cleaner, but I'm just gonna get anything that is dripping off of here first. So now let's clean this off. Before you actually start spraying, cap it off just so nothing gets in there. And grab brake parts cleaner, spray all of this everywhere where it leaked. That way we get all the brake fluid off. At this point, once everything is cleaned off, you can remove your absorbent pads or whatever you had there to catch the fluid. Before you move on, don't forget to plug in the brake fluid level sensor. Make sure that clicks and lock the connector. Now top your master cylinder off with .3 brake fluid all the way up to the max line. There we go. If it's a little bit over, that's okay, because we'll be removing fluid by bleeding it. And I'm going to put the cap back on just so moisture and debris doesn't get in there while we're bleeding. The sequence on this vehicle is going to be starting at the right rear wheel, then moving over to the left rear, then the right front, and then the left front. At that point, if you feel the need to bleed your ABS module, if your truck has ABS, that is the point where you would bleed the ABS module. And then, if needed, repeat the process again, right rear, right front, left front. For me, I'm just going to do a regular bleed without the ABS. That should do the trick for me. I have an assistant inside the truck waiting to pump up the brakes. At this point, I'm at the right rear wheel. I'm going to take this cover off the bleeder screw. This is a 10mm bleeder screw, so grab a wrench or a socket, break it free. Once you do that, I personally have this hose that's going to go on here to minimize the mess. It's going to bleed through it. So I'm going to ask my assistant to go ahead and pump up the brakes and then hold pressure. All right, they're holding pressure, so I'm going to crack this bleeder screw open. Once I open this, fluid will come through. It's on the floor, so I'm going to close this off. Go ahead and pump again. We're going to do this a few times until we have clean fluid with no air bubbles. Open it up. That's on the floor. It's nice clean fluid. You can let go of the brake pedal. You'd want to repeat this process until, like I said, you have clean fluid and no air bubbles. Looks like that is the case for me, so I'm going to take this off. If you spilt anything, clean it off with brake parts cleaner and reinstall this cap. At this point, if you want to, check the level of your master cylinder, but I'm going to move on to the left rear wheel. If you have one of these receptacles with a hose on it, install it and go ahead and pump up the brakes. All right, holding pressure, I'm going to crack this open. All right, go ahead and pump again. Perfect, that is nice and clean, fresh fluid, no air bubbles, so I'm all set on this caliper. I'm going to take this off, clean any mess that occurred, cap it off. Now check the master cylinder, top it off, and let's move over to the right front wheel. We're at the right front wheel. I'm going to install my hose here. Go ahead and pump up the brakes. All right, holding pressure. Crack this open. Close it off. Go ahead and pump again. Perfect. Nice clean fluid. You can let go of the brake pedal. Did make a little bit of a mess on this one, so I'm going to take some brake parts cleaner, spray it all over to get rid of all the brake fluid. Clean everything off. Last wheel, this is the front left wheel. Take that cap off if you have one. Stick your hose on if you have one. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal. Holding pressure, so crack this open. Yep, quite a bit of air on this one. Go ahead and pump again. All right, you can let go of the brake pedal. This was very nice clean fluid here, no air bubbles for 2 pumps in a row. At this point, we can clean everything off, cap it off. Now top off the master cylinder one last time. Make sure it's all the way up to the max line. And don't forget to put on the cap. Make sure it's nice and tight. Clean any brake fluid that's spilt. And to put the wheels on, you want to torque them to 140 foot-pounds in a cross pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.